Hello! It's been a while. Let's finally do this recent reads because I have been putting this off and I am finally sitting down today to film it. I will be telling you all of the books that I have read since September of 2023 up until February of 2024, and then the next recent read will be March to May or June. We'll see what happens. I always do a June wrap up separately, so you'll get that, but for now, this is the recent reads, everything I've read recently. So since I have a lot of books, the way that I narrowed it down was just to show you books that I haven't talked about. I have a lot of reading vlogs, so I will briefly go over these books or just mention the reading vlog that they're in so you can get my review on these books if you're interested. First of all, at the end of December, I read the young adult finalists in the Goodreads Choice Awards, so that video will be down below. I read a lot of YA for that. I also have some reading vlogs that I did in October for some queer crime fiction and other mystery thrillers. And I think that that's all that I really need to mention. If there's a reading vlog for a specific book, I will mention that. But if you're new here, hi, I'm Alex. I'm a trans man, and this is Books and Paperbacks, where I talk all about queer and trans books. So if you're new here and you like this video, feel free to hit subscribe. And if you enjoy the video, give it a like and comment something down below. It really helps push this video to the algorithm. All of the books I mentioned will be linked down below. Let's get started. Starting off with September, I read 3 books. One of those books being a book that I read for my trope taste test video. That was an experiment that I'm still doing. I just haven't gotten the time to do it. I think it'll come back in June or July. But this is basically a reading experiment for myself to find out what tropes I like. So this was Academic Rivals. I read Not Here to Be Liked by Michelle Kwok, and you can go and watch that video to find out all of my thoughts. One of the books that I read for September that I can tell you about was this novella for Sapphic September. It is Fall Into You by Georgina Christensen, and I really enjoyed this. It gave me Gilmore Girls vibes. Basically, it's a second chance romance between 2 women who were childhood friends. Amari has left home, which was Texas, when she left her fiance at the altar. She also has a lot of turmoil and relationship problems with her mother. This novella is set at a fall festival, and Amari is selling something. I can't remember what it was, but when she is there, she runs into her childhood best friend. So this is like a childhood friends to lovers second chance romance kind of thing, and her name is Cassidy. So she runs into Cassidy and they basically start talking again, and as this is a romance, things go somewhere. Cassidy is in charge of a coffee shop, so there's a lot of food in here and autumnal vibes. Even though it was sweet, I really liked that there was other conflict and conversations instead of it just being like a short and sweet novella, which I still would have liked. So I enjoyed this. I thought it was cute. If you're looking for a short and sweet sapphic romance, I highly recommend this one. The last book I read in September was a graphic novel called Kim Reaper. I believe I read this for the Books and Lala readathon. I'm a part of her membership. She has a readathon with her membership and it is out of season, so I read this, but I also was reading it for Sapphic September because it is a sapphic romance, and it is about Grim Reapers, but they're women and they're sapphic, and it was funny, but I didn't love it. Like, I thought it was fine, but it wasn't my favorite thing. It was funny, like the concept is funny. Honestly, it gave me Cartoon Network vibes. I felt like I was like reading a Cartoon Network book or something. Yeah, it was interesting. I don't think I'm gonna pick up the rest of the series, but it was a book. Moving into October, I actually have reading vlogs for October. So I have weekly reading vlogs where I read Promise Boys, Criminal Intentions. That's it. Like I said, my description will be filled with all of the links. Moving into November, this book I was reading for Buzzwordathon. It's a cozy mystery and it just ended up falling into November. And this was Body and Soul Food by Abby Collette. This is a cozy mystery following twins Keaton and Kobe. They were separated at birth and they had gone into the foster care system and they are adults and reunited, and we are following Keaton as she is about to open a bookstore that also is a cafe that sells soul food. The setting and the world was so cool. I love books about food, so this was really fun. The mystery element is that Kobe's friend, Keaton has some romantic ties to this friend, and when they go into the subway, they see he's dead. His body is in the train cart and he's dead. And so they're on a mission to find out what happened. And I thought that the action was really fun. It is slow at some points because it is a cozy mystery, but I really enjoyed this. I'm so glad because I've been wanting to pick up Abby Collette and I didn't get a chance to pick up her more known series that is the ice cream one. And so I really enjoyed this. I thought that it was not as intense as it could have been, which was nice because sometimes I just need a cozy mystery. I don't need it to be super intense. Content warnings for fire, death, murder, and mention of being in foster care. Now, November, I also started reading for the Goodreads Choice Awards, so I have a bunch of those books, so I'm honestly just gonna skip them. I'll have that video linked down below for you. Then December, a book I can tell you was Us by Sara Soler, and my friend Michelle from Thor Wants Another Letter, she just like sent me the cover and was like, you would probably like this. So I ended up reading it from Libby, and I think that this was like the only book I read for the Queer Lit Readathon in December, and I thought it was fine. It is a nonfiction about these two women who thought that they were straight, and basically they're not. It's a memoir about them finding their queerness and transness, and so the dynamic is a cis woman who is bisexual and Sarah is a trans woman, and so we really talk about her transition and stuff. But the one thing that bothered me, and I know that this was just like their memoir about their relationship and things, but what rubbed me the wrong way is her partner. I feel like she kind of like centers herself in the transition, being like, oh, this is so hard, this is going to be so hard. And I just don't care for cis feelings. I hate this rhetoric from cis people that get in relationships with trans people. Hello, I just want to clarify my point here because I don't want to diminish what the partner is saying and what her feelings were, because those are valid feelings to feel scared for your partner of what she's going to have to endure. Transphobia is very real, especially towards trans women, and there's a lot of things that Sarah had to deal with as she was coming out. And so I understand what her partner was saying, but I want to mention that they were in a relationship, and at the end of the book, and currently they are married, it was just the way that the partner made it all about her and was like, oh my god, what am I going to do? My partner's trans. And she just kept making it about herself. It gets better over time in the book where they're learning about transness, and she does support Sarah 100%. And I know that this is a real thing, that people are together, probably like from high school or college, and then realize that they are trans or queer. Then maybe that relationship doesn't last. And so I get it, that these are realistic things that happen. I just don't like when cis people center themselves when somebody is transitioning. I just don't like it, and I still stand by my point. I just wanted to clarify in case I was coming off like too harsh, because I kind of felt like I was, but I just still stand by my point. I think these are just the type of things where I'm just like, it's not about you. Yes, it is about the relationship, and you can be like jarred, you know, like cis people's feelings are valid in those regards where it's like, oh my god, this is a huge change. I totally get it. I just wanted to clarify there, and back to the video. I just hate when cis people center their feelings when a trans person is especially going through transition, if they are socially transitioning or medically transitioning. Like, her partner was there for her. This was the beginning of Sarah coming out, and I just really hate when cis people center their feelings and are like, oh, this is gonna be so hard for me, and aren't like, oh, I wonder what Sarah's going through. This must be really hard for her. I'm not trying to diminish their experiences, but I just absolutely hate when cis people do that and are like, oh my god, it's so hard for me, but then never acknowledge the trans person's feelings at all. Because yeah, transitioning socially, medically is hard, but it is great for trans people. There is a reason that transitioning saves lives and gender affirming care saves lives. However, I will say I think this is still important and interesting because it is following these two women who later in life, in their 30s, I believe, like 20s and 30s, they find their gender identity and sexuality. Her partner discovers she's bisexual, and Sara discovers that she's a trans woman. It is weird to review this because I don't want to critique somebody's relationship that I don't know. I'm only knowing what they give me in this book, but I just was really bothered by the fact that the partner made Sara's transition about her and not about Sara. Like, sometimes she does, where she is like being a good ally and things like that, but I just cannot get over the fact that she centered her feelings. Yeah, I just don't like that. Then I read some queer Christmassy holiday books, and I have a vlog for that. It was a 24-hour vlog. Then on Christmas, I read The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich by Deya Muniz, and I don't get the hype. Like, it was cute and cheesy, but it wasn't my favorite, honestly. Content warning for sexism, death of a parent, and misogyny. The problem I had with this book is the way I always feel when I read about books that are about cis people who are cosplaying as another gender. And I know that this could be a whole different discussion, but I don't know, just me as a trans man and the transphobia that I experience and other trans men experience, I am sensitive to these type of stories because I'm like, I am not cosplaying as a man, and when I read a book that a cis woman is cosplaying as a man, it really bothers me. It just does, and hey, that might just be me, but I just don't like those stories. It is weird. Like, some trans people might just feel empowered by them, but to me I just feel uncomfortable. So this is a YA royalty romance, and maybe it's that I don't like royalty romances, but I really did have a problem with that center conflict. So basically we're following Lady Camembert. I might be saying that wrong, but as all royalty, she is told she has to marry a man, and she doesn't want to because she is sapphic. When her father passes away, she disguises herself as a man and moves to the capital city of the kingdom to start over as Count Camembert. Now, this would have been such a cool, like, trans story, but it's not. So basically, yeah, she ends up going undercover as a man, and she ends up meeting Princess Bree. She is an activist, which was cool. I don't really know what the setting was here. I thought it would be historical because it is like royalty, but it does have some modern elements. For instance, there's a character who is playing the Nintendo Switch, which is so bizarre. Like, okay. This is YA, so like, I get it. I know that this is fantasy, so who cares? But that's why it is kind of weird that it's fantasy and they're playing a Nintendo Switch, but... So basically, she does go undercover, and I just thought the miscommunication was weird. She is cosplaying this whole entire time, and if you don't want spoilers, I am going to spoil the book for you right now, so I will leave something on the screen, or you can just go to the next book in my chapters, but for the spoiler people, they end up getting so close to getting married, like the whole ceremony is planned pretty much. And then the Princess Bree, she finds out that Camembert is lying, and so she just stops talking to her. And I'm just like, this was too much drama. And then I just feel weird as a trans man that I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't like these kind of stories. Kudos to the people that did like it. I just wasn't a fan of it. And yeah, like I said, maybe it's just myself. Maybe it's something I need to work on, but I just cannot get over these kind of stories. I don't know. These stories just make me uncomfortable, and I'm weirded out by them. I did like the cheese puns. It was funny. So it had that. Then we move into some of the books that I read for my video where I read books that were based on my favorite movies, which I had so much fun with. I loved that video so much, so definitely go and check it out if you haven't. I read a High School Musical book, I read a few other books, and it was fun. Then as the year was ending, I was cramming in some books for the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge. I ended up reading a manga, Blue Flag Volume 1 by Kato, and this was recommended for fans of Heartstopper, so I ended up picking it up. It was just an introduction, but I will read more of the series. I don't read manga a lot. I've only read like another manga in my life, which was trans. It was Wandering Sun, I think it was called. It has a similar story and trope where you have this kid who is gay and is basically in the closet. Honestly, it was so similar to Heartstopper, and like I said, I would like to read more of the series. I feel like I don't really have much to say because this was just an introduction, but I'm excited to read the rest of the series, whenever that will be. Next was a book that I literally never reviewed, so here it is. It was a book I was reading in that Christmas 24-hour reading vlog, and it is It's a Fabulous Life by Kelly Farmer, and it is a sapphic retelling of It's a Wonderful Life, and I loved it. I thought that this was so fun. It was just a sweet book, and it was cool to just read a retelling of It's a Wonderful Life. I feel like I don't really see many retellings of movies in books, so that was cool. Honestly, I feel like you could just read this any time of year, but I highly recommend it. Because it's a retelling, I don't really have too much to say, but I like the way that it was developed. It does have small town vibes. Basically, our main character is learning to accept like a lot of things that have happened to her in her life, and she's just cherishing what she has. I'm really glad because Kelly Farmer has some sapphic hockey books that I really want to read, so I'm glad that this one was a win. Then to start out the year, I did my video where I read books that had song lyrics in the title. This was for the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge, but I didn't get to actually complete the prompt because I didn't do it until January of 2024, so but I ended up reading 3 books for that, and I really liked that video. It was fun. I had been working on that forever. I started in September, and I didn't finish it till January. Then I started fresh in January with my new 2024 reading challenges. I am doing the Diverse Baseline Challenge and the Buzzwordathon, as well as Pop Sugar. For Buzzwordathon, you had to read a book with "their" in the title, and so I read Stars in Their Eyes by Jessica Walton. This was queer and it had disability rep. It was set in Australia and it was at a convention, and so we have a non-binary character and our main character is bisexual. They're 14 and 15 and they meet at a fandom convention. Our main character, Maisie, is bisexual and an amputee, and our love interest, Ollie, is non-binary. Basically, Maisie wants to meet her favorite actor, who is also an amputee, and when she meets Ollie, they catch feelings for each other. They are 14 and 15, and this book really talks about disability in media, and I thought that this was great. I just love reading YA, and I really hope that this touches the disabled teens that need it, and I just thought it was so cool. I love books like this because I'm so glad that we have so much in YA at the moment and that teens get to see themselves represented in books like this, and I'm especially glad that the characters were younger because it is really important to have like 14 and 15-year-olds in YA as well. Next, I also am doing the 12 for 12 challenge where I had 12 people recommend books and I ended up reading Basil and Oregano. This was cool. It's a young adult graphic novel set at a magical boarding school, but it's also a culinary school, so it's like magical baking and cooking. I had a lot of fun reading it. I believe it was Caitlin at Monday's Shelves who recommended this to me, so thank you, Caitlin, because this was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. It was just fun, you know? Sometimes you just need a pick-me-up book like that. Especially to start the year. That was a good one. Next, I read another graphic novel, and this was Confetti Realms by Nadia Shamus, and this was so cool. Content warnings for mention of a panic attack, mention of someone having a seizure, and mention of a parent having cancer. This felt like a fever dream. It had animatronics and queerness. It gave me Five Nights at Freddy's, but like in a graphic novel. There's these kids on Halloween night and they are trying to summon something and are just playing around in a cemetery, and then they go into this house and they meet this animatronic and they basically have to go on a quest, and that's why I'm like, this was a fever dream because it had like animals talking and it was so cool. Like, I need everybody to read this because it was just so weird and cool. It was such an interesting book. Like, it was fun and cool. It was weird. If you like portal fantasy like Finna by Nino Cipri, I highly recommend this. I thought it was cool. It was very unique. Then I read Heartstopper Volume 5, which I think I just got from Libby. It's Heartstopper. It was cute. I feel like I don't really have much to say about Heartstopper anymore, but I like to read it. It's good. Then I read Heart Hunt Havoc, which I believe I read for the Divers Baseline Challenge to read a book by a Latina author. And I talk about this more in my T for T Romances video. This was a queer horror following a trans exorcist, Colin, and he goes to a customer's house, Bishop, who is non-binary, and it's a T for T romance. Horror, animals, and like a lot of talk about trauma, but I thought that this was beautiful. It was so good. The January prompt for the Diverse Baseline Challenge, prompt A, was a collection of poetry by a BIPOC author, so I finally read Poūkahangatus by Tay Tibble. This was great. I am so glad I finally got a chance to read this because I got it for Christmas like a couple years ago, and I loved it. Like, I've highlighted and tabbed it a bunch, and it was so good. She is challenging and re-spinning Greek mythology into these poems, and I just thought it was great. Like, I don't even know what to say about poetry anymore. I just like read poetry collections and I'm like, this was good. I liked it. But yeah, I just enjoyed this. I'm so glad I finally got to read it, and it is one of my favorite poetry collections of the year. The author is Indigenous, and I'm just always so in awe when I read poetry by Indigenous authors because I'm just like, they do it the best. It was so good. Now moving into February, which is the last month for this recent reads, I read a book for the Buzzwordathon. The prompt was to read a book with a positive word, and I finally got around to reading the short story collection Black Boy Joy, and this was so good. Oh my god, I was introduced to so many different black, male, and non-binary authors. We have George M. Johnson, who I love, and we had Jason Reynolds, but so many different authors. And like, my only critique before I finished the book was that there is like a 3-part story, and it like starts in the beginning, and then there's one in the middle, and then the end. And I just loved the way that it ended the whole entire book. I was like, I keep forgetting about this. I don't really see the point. And then once I got to the end and it was the last story, it made so much sense, and it was so sweet. I loved this so much, especially that there was like fantasy. It wasn't just contemporary. I just love that I was exposed to different authors. This was a middle grade collection, but what I loved is not all of the authors were middle grade writers. Like, we had the author of Riot Baby, we had so many different authors, and I thought that this was so interesting. There are content warnings for mention of COVID, racism, bullying, grief, death of a loved one, injury, and medical content, but I just loved this whole collection. I thought it was so interesting, and I had been wanting to read it for a while, so I was like, hey. I just thought the idea behind this was so cool. We also had Julian Winters, and all of these stories had joy. It was so good. Oh my god, I loved it. Hello. I forgot a couple books. First, I want to talk about a DNF that I had, which I was so upset about. This is Love at 350. I can't remember who the author is. I know her first name's Lisa, but it'll be up on the screen. And I was so bummed about this because I was really excited about what the whole concept was. Basically, it is this home ec teacher, and she is a lesbian, I believe, and she loves baking. She's always baking for her kids. She's going through a divorce, and her kids basically are like, go on this baking show that's coming into town. This is set in some place in California. I think it's like Napa Valley or something like that. And so basically she goes on to this show and she is infatuated with the judge. So it's like a romance between her and the judge. So contestant and judge. And I started to like it. Like, I picked it up because I was excited about this concept. How cool. But I just felt like it didn't get to the point. Like, it was too slow of a romance. I didn't even like get to the romance part. They were romantic with each other, but I was just so disinterested. this didn't have much conflict besides like they shouldn't be together, like a forbidden romance thing. But besides that, like I just was bored, and it sucked because like it just didn't have enough drama for me to be interested, or like it just didn't have anything that was pulling me into it. Like there was no factor where I was like, oh, are they going to get together or not? It was just very slow, and I was so disappointed because I am not somebody who DNFs books very much. It was just such a letdown, honestly. I'm reading my review. I stopped at 40% and I was enjoying it, but the execution just wasn't there for me. It was too slow burn, and I felt myself not being as interested in the characters. And this was one of my most anticipated releases, so this is such a bummer. There's nothing that is gonna get me to read the rest of this. It's such a shame because, like I said, I'm not one to DNF, and I was excited about this book, but it just wasn't giving me enough to actually be interested. So I just wanted to mention that DNF. Now, back to the video. And to close out this recent reads, we had the books that I read for my most recent video, where I had the Storygraph recommendations choose my TBR because I wanted to test the recommendations to see if they are legit or not. So go and watch that video. But that is it for me. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new here, feel free to hit subscribe if you want to hear more about queer and trans books, and give this video a thumbs up and let me know what your favorite book of 2024 has been so far. I hope to see you in my next video soon. Bye.